Jamie, you're the first Scotsman on here. Um, this question I thought of last minute because I thought it'd be a good question to ask. Um, what's the better city, Glasgow or Edinburgh?
That's quite a could be a bit of a deal breaker, that one, isn't it? Depending on where you go. Well, what I'll do is rather than being sort of lean towards one or the other, I'll sit right on the fence, only because we are based right in between both. So we're based in Livingston in West Lothian, and that's bang in the centre of Edinburgh and Glasgow. So can't pick any favourites there. Both great
Yeah.
cities.
I think I checked the Google Maps as well because I wanted to check before I asked the question, like which one you were. I think you were a bit closer to Edinburgh on the
Yeah, that
Edinburgh
is right.
side, if I'm correct. Yeah,
And being
yeah,
honest, probably as a business and things like that, especially in the roofing business, we are probably more driven towards the east. It's just been a natural sort of that's the area that we've sort of spilled into, rather than sort of the west. But we do cover the full of central Scotland, so yeah, there's no preferences, so nothing controversial coming
nice.
here.
I tried to pull it out of you, but it's all right. So where did you grow up? Which area did you grow up in? Now, if you say like a village, I probably won't know the name of it, so you can just tell me like if it's closer to Glasgow or Edinburgh.
Yeah, so I grew up in this area. It's at the county's called West Lothian, and I grew up in a town called Armadale. So where I'm based at the moment, the business is in Livingston, and I stay in Bathgate now. But it's just a small little group of towns, and it's quite different from the cities, to be honest. It's a lot of people would call us as being out in the sticks, so they think that we're sort of out in the sort of countryside, but it's not really. But I can see why they would say that. But
Yeah,
but yeah, I grew up in a little place called Armadale, so just a sort of one of many little towns in West Lothian.
nice, nice. So when you were growing up, I want to find out a bit more about like how did you actually get into roofing specifically?
Yeah, so leaving school and well, probably my dad was in construction, so he had a concrete business where they poured the concrete floors, put the mesh in, poured the concrete floors, and then finished them with the polishing machines. And when I was a teenager, I used to go and give him a hand on sites and things like that, and sort of sneak on there, like going back, that's going back years ago. Like health and safety wasn't quite as strict as it was and as it is now. And I always sort of enjoyed being quite hands on. I was always quite strong and active, and I really enjoyed that. Whereas, the cliche, I wasn't very academic at school. I think on my trades podcast, everyone comes on and usually says the same thing. Wasn't academic at school. Knew I was going to be hands on, but my story is quite similar. So I thought I would always go and probably work with my dad doing the concrete. And when it sort of came to time to leave school, I thought that was what was going to happen. And then he more or less said, "Look, this isn't really a trade as such. It's sort of, he said what he said was go and get a proper trade." And I don't mean that in any disrespect, and he didn't mean in any disrespect to the concrete guys, but he more or less said like go and become a joiner or a plumber or a roofer or an electrician or something. So I went and sought out an apprenticeship, and basically just went to the job centre, got a big folder of all the employers in the West Lothian area who did apprenticeships. Even like you can do an apprenticeship in becoming a butcher as well. I even applied for that, so I wasn't really overly. It wasn't massively on like I knew it was going to be construction, but because it was so hard to get an apprenticeship back then, I actually had tried like the butcher one and everything that was possibly an apprenticeship. I just wanted to have like a trade as such behind me, and really, the advice that I was getting was that if you've got a trade, you can always fall back on it. You always make lots of money, and you'll never be out of work. Was sort of something I learned from Charlie Mullins, and he always said that. And I think it's very true. If you've got that skill behind you, not only construction, but a skill to fall back on, it can be quite important to then springboard you forward. So I made a lot of calls, and actually out of about 60 odd businesses, only 2 came back. One was a bricklaying company and one was a roofing company. Roofing company offered me a job, a trial with them for a year, and if I proved myself, I would then go to college the following year and start the proper apprenticeship. The bricklaying chap, he offered me just a start with them, and it wasn't going to be a trade as such. It was just going to be learn the job, but no proper qualification. That's the way that guy worked. That was better money. However, I just seen more of an opportunity with having the actual qualifications behind me. So I took the roofing one, and that was sort of it. And in the end, it ended up being the Sunday night. I made that phone call, and I actually started on the Monday. It was quite bizarre.
Oh wow, that's crazy. So when you were looking for the apprenticeships and you started with this company, did you always like have in the back of your head that you want to eventually start your own business, or were you more like, I'm just happy, working a 9 to 5 for a few years?
I think if I'm honest, I don't think I knew I was going to start in business on my own. I wouldn't say I absolutely knew that that's what I was going to do, but I think meeting my now wife Kelly quite young, and she had a couple of kids from a previous relationship. So Lauren and Robbie, my stepdaughter and my stepson, I took them on from the age of 18. So at that point, I'm still an apprentice. I've got a family to provide for. I've got a house to keep. And basically the money, apprentice wages aren't great. So especially when you're trying to run a family and things. So it was always a bit of a struggle. So I was always quite entrepreneurial in the fact that I would do like Chinese deliveries at the weekends to sort of top up the money, and I would do like grass cutting and things like that, like little sort of side hustle kind of jobs. So I started to be able to deal with customers and deal with people, and like be able to like go and collect money in and things like that, and just get used to all those, like a small entry level into sort of being a bit of a self-employed or sort of business owner. And that's where it kind of stemmed from. And then I was always massive on customer care, even from just like all these different things, like looking after people's gardens or doing the deliveries, and like actually the roofing apprenticeship as well. You always had to deal with people, and you always had to look after their property and do a good job and make them feel at ease with you being there. So the customer service side of things was always something I was passionate about. And then as the years moved on, once I became qualified and I started getting like tradesman's money, I realised that it wasn't really enough for the life that I wanted to lead, and the life that I wanted to give my family. So I went and spoke to my boss, and I said, look, I need more money if this is going to work. And he was like, well, you're getting what the rate should be. That's sort of where you're at for the level of work that you're doing and things. And I asked if I could take on any more tasks or if there was anything else I could do. And there wasn't really anything, to be honest. And it wasn't really forthcoming, so I just felt a bit trapped. I knew that if I went to another roofing company, you might get another £1 or £2 an hour at a push more, but that wasn't what I was looking for. I was looking for a lot more, and I wanted to be in control of it for myself. The harder I worked and the more I put into it, the more I would get out, and that's where the self-employment sort of side came into it, where I thought I need to do this on my own and earn my own living as such, and just be sort of more in control of it.
That's profound, because a lot of people, I didn't actually know about the story that you had your family at that age, because like I know loads of people who start off businesses when they're on their own. They don't have a family to provide for, they don't have a wife, they don't have kids or anything like that. They pretty much have no dependencies. They have nothing to worry about if it all goes wrong. Like it happens all the time, right? You always hear about entrepreneurs who they start their business, it fails, they're either homeless or sleeping in the car for a few months or something like that happens. So it's profound that you took that leap because it's risky. It's interesting. It comes full circle because in the very first episode, Chris from Heavy Trade, he talked about how that's probably the main thing that holds a lot of people back. That worry about, pretty much you're losing your income overnight essentially,
Yeah,
and you have to make it all back and then some to make it worth it, because there's a lot more stress that goes behind when you start off on your own. There's so much more to do. There's just everything just builds up over and over again. So it's really profound that you actually took that leap. Um, in those early stages, how was it? Because like I imagine if you have those responsibilities behind you, and then suddenly your income's gone, how did it feel to have nothing to fall back on? Did it almost feel like you were in survival mode in a sense?
yeah. I think it's quite difficult. You don't know how it's going to be until you start. But like fast forward into now, and I work with a lot of trades business owners in my mentorship business, and what I always say to them is there's always little leaps of faith that you need to take. And that's something that I noticed right from the beginning there, that I took a leap of faith on myself. And what it did is, when you've got people that depend on you and you put an accountability on yourself to sort of take that leap of faith, it means that you can't fail. Like, you can't really afford to fail. So, like you say, that I didn't have like any savings or anything, because it'd been really difficult, sort of actually just looking after the family, and even trying to get a holiday and things like that was really scarce. And that was while working 7 days a week and the evenings. So, I was working Monday to Friday on the roofing job. Then if my employer could give me weekend work, then I would do it. If not, I would do like the gardening side of things, like cutting people's grass and hedges and things, and doing that maintenance. And then at the evenings I would be doing like the Chinese deliveries. So where I got to was, if I could try and somehow make enough money within 5 days, then it would allow me to spend time with my family at the weekends. So my goal was take that, what I was making collectively as that 7 days sort of money, and squeeze it into 5 days. And I thought by having been self-employed that would work. I was probably quite wrong, if I'm honest, because it ended up being, some weeks you had 3 days of work, and other days you had, other weeks you would have like 2, 3 weeks of work that was just so busy that you didn't know when the next thing was coming. So you just worked 7 days anyway. So I was stuck in that 7 day trap for quite a long time, actually, and then working evenings to do the estimates, the quotations, and sending them back to customers and things. So it was quite difficult, but I was too busy to worry about the fear of failing, or I was too busy to worry about almost, just yeah. All I could do was just push forward. There wasn't really much else for it. And the guys that I was leaving, so when I left that business, there was a few of the other roofers who said, "Oh, we'll see you in a couple of weeks," or "You'll be back in 6 months," and that drives you on, when they say, "Oh, I don't know what you're getting yourself in for," and all of that stuff. That just sets a fire inside of you. And I'm not an overly competitive person. I like to think that over my years in business, I've been very collaborative. Speaking to other roofing companies, or speaking to other business owners, and all, and doing the podcast and things like that. You've got to collaborate with the industry, and I've always been like that. But there is that part of me that likes to prove people wrong. And when someone doubts you, or says, "Oh, we'll see you back in 6 months," that for me was I just had a lot of people to prove wrong, I think, and just prove myself right as well. You're always trying to build that self-confidence in yourself, and you just push on.
Yeah. I mean, it's a weird one because a lot of people will think about that situation and think, that's an absolute nightmare having those responsibilities coupled with trying to start your own business brand new. But then hearing you speak about it was more almost like a benefit because of that. You just mentioned there, you literally could not afford to fail. Like if you ever felt lazy, or if you ever felt like you weren't going to do the work one day, that in the back of your mind, or you knowing that they're relying on you, means that never happens.
Yeah,
Whereas someone who's on their own, and maybe they live in their parents' house or whatever, they can afford to sleep in for like 3 days or 4 days and not actually work that much. They can afford to do that. But then you have to literally work, pretty much every hour you possibly can to make sure that you succeed. And it's a huge like black and white difference between the two situations. But
Yeah.
then whatever your situation helped you succeed and push on a lot quicker than anyone else probably would. So it's a really, really cool perspective. When
Yeah,
you were on
you're
that journey,
totally
yeah,
sorry, I
yeah,
was going to say
go
you're
on.
totally right, and that's one thing that I've always used that as a technique as the business has grown over the years. Always sort of add more accountability, whether that's taking on staff or taking on new customers or whatever, and then that holds me accountable to then go and deliver. So I've never let myself get in a comfort zone. I've always pushed for the next thing, and then even when I've not felt like it, I've did it because I know that that'll drive me forward. And there was in those early days when I first started up, like I took my brother on straight away as well. So I had him to provide for. And then when I realised, he was just turned 16 and I was still a young tradesman myself as well, and young for being into self-employment, I had to hire someone else quite quickly as well. So I had 3 staff in the very early days. So you've got an accountability straight away that you need to go and deliver for these people. You need to make sure that you've offered them a job. So you need to make sure that you've got work there for them, and their wages are going to be there. Their pay is going to be there every single week. But just as you were talking about it with the sort of having the dependents and things, my son Harry, he's sort of coincides with ages with Taylor Roos, because he was born in the July and I handed my notice in the December. So at that point, things were already tough, and I knew that the income that I was receiving, even doing those 7 days, wasn't enough. So I knew I was going to need to do something. So you couldn't have picked a worse time if you actually did a business plan and wrote it down. So I had like 3 young kids. One was a newborn. I had my own. Well, we were renting a house at the time, which was a private let that was really expensive as well. And then, it was sort of winter time and just no really great roofing weather, to be honest. And right before Christmas. So I just say there's never a good time to start. So you may as well, once it's there and everything starts to align, and you just kind of just jump in and just get it done. And then, the only ways forward after that. But certainly, if I was choosing, I would never go back and change it, of course, because it's worked out all pretty well. But if I was ever advising, I wouldn't have thought that would have been when I said start, with
Yeah.
those conditions. But it worked great for me. So in some respects, how can I say that? Because a lot of that was the strength that pulled me forward. A lot of those, what you would deem as negatives or things that could potentially make it more difficult, that was my driving force. The young kids and things like that.
Yeah, it reminds me. You just said there like there's never a good time to start. Alex Hormozy, who I quote all the time because he's just a genius. He said really famously, he said, if you start when it's the hardest point, then everything after that will be easier. Like as in, if you start when it's literally the hardest situation or hardest point in life to start something, then you'll always continue it once it gets easier, because it will always get easier from that point. And that's not only with business, but it's like with anything. It's with the gym. If you're going to the gym when you're super busy and you have no time in your calendar, then you'll be able to stick to it once you do have time in your calendar, because it will just be easier from then on. So
Yeah.
it's just an amazing principle to apply all the time. When you were like growing your business now that you're on your own and you don't have anything to rely on, income wise, what was like the turning point for you where you felt like maybe you started, hiring people, or you started, subcontracting work out or anything like that, where you thought, okay, I've got like an actual business here now?
Yeah, I went from, so that was around 2013 when I first started. So it was basically the December 2012 is when I handed in my notice, and they just kind of said I had to give them like 6 weeks notice. It was just close to Christmas, and then there was the Christmas holidays in between that, and they basically just said, right, on you go. So that was me. I was out on my own, and then that went from sort of January 2013 to probably I probably went like 3-4 years of being self-employed and having I had one full-time employee who was my brother doing his roofing apprenticeship, and then I had sort of like other self-employed roofers working for me, and it was probably around, I think it was the end of 2016, or I think it was the end of 2016. I had been asked to a networking meeting. And at that point, I was just doing everything on my own. I had an accountant who I seen like once a year, and they did like our tax returns and things like that. And we weren't a limited company. We weren't even VAT registered or anything. And I went along to this networking meeting, and it was full of like business professionals, sort of financial advisors, accountants. There was other trades there as well, and then there was a business coach there. I think there was maybe more than one, different types of business coaches possibly. And this one guy, it just kind of said to me, "You don't own a business, you own a job," and stung a wee bit at that time, because I'd been sort of battling it out for a good few years now, and had a few vans on the road, a few guys with me, and was lots of good reviews online, and scaffolding all around West Lothian with our banners up on it and things, and sign written vans, sign written uniforms, all that sort of branded stuff. And it does feel quite tangible when you're a small business owner, because you think that you've built something, and for someone to say that, it was quite painful. But I knew that he was coming from a good place. I could tell that he wasn't saying it out of badness. He was trying to trigger something in me, which he did. And then he said, if you want to know how to run a business, a proper business, read this book. And he gave me a book called The E-Myth by Michael Gerber. I don't know if you've heard of it, but basically in that book, it sort of explains a concept of being the technician, being the manager, and being the entrepreneur all at one time, and how that should be separated into different areas within your business. And there's lots of lessons in that book, to be honest, but what I realised was that in order to have a proper business, it needs to be a profitable business that can run without you, essentially. And as soon as I started to learn that, it was just, I just couldn't unsee it anymore. So when I understood that that's what business really was, it started to make me just see things totally different, and I just wanted it. Like, I just wanted to have that. I think what it was is I wanted to sort of almost complete something. So from then till now, my sort of vision has always been to have that profitable business that runs without you. And we're over the years, like, that's what I've just continued to do, is put all the steps in to do that. So I started to hire more people. I started to sort of implement like systems and processes, and we would start from just doing flow charts on. I'm quite a visual person, so everything goes up on whiteboards, and I would just say, right, the customer inquiry comes in, then it goes to the next stage, the next stage, the next stage, and we would break it all down, and then there'd be a process for every single step. And I just started to strip the business down to actually work out exactly what was happening and what it was, and then adding in little key steps in between and improving everything. And that was sort of how I did it, just through learning through the books. And I worked with a couple of different mentors as well, who they would sort of point me in the right direction. So in 2017, we took the business. We basically took the business limited. So we started the business properly at that point. Went from being sort of Jamie Taylor sole trader to the limited company, which is now Taylor Roofs. And from there, it's just been a year-on-year growth. We've brought in different levels sort of over the years, in terms of, at first we brought in the roofers, and all the roofing work was being done, and I was doing like the surveying and the estimating and the quoting, and like overseeing the jobs and things. And then slowly but surely, like bring in the admin, and then brought in finance, and then brought in like sort of an ops person. So in my kind of scenario, it was the most advanced person who was on the tools, who'd been with me the longest. They came off the tools and became the ops manager and looked after the guys, and just kind of broke it all up that way. And then I guess there was I didn't think I would ever be able to let go of the sales. That was one of the big things that I thought there's no way somebody could sell like me. And even though all the other areas I thought there's no way somebody will send invoices like me, or there's no way somebody will send the quotes like me, or there's no way somebody will check the jobs like me. You actually realise that people can do it if you give them the right systems and the right processes. So eventually through time, I brought in a roof surveyor who was going to go out and actually do the sales for us as well. And that was a big game changer. Letting go of that part allowed me to sort of project myself up a level, and I became like the general manager in my own business. So I had someone doing sales, someone running operations, had someone running admin and finance, as well as we had our outsourced teams, which was like a good accountant, good financial advisor, good marketing people and things like that. And so you would have them outside of the business as well as your little group inside. And that's where I started to go, this is a business. This is actually, it runs, and if I go on holiday for a week, it'll still be there when I come back. And sometimes there'll be, we just learned from going on holiday, coming back, and if it was a mess, it wasn't built as good as it should be yet. And yeah, that was. I know that was quite long-winded, but that was the turning point, was understanding what business is and making that change from being tradesman to businessman. It's not everyone who can switch on and see that, but I think when you do see it, you can't unsee it. You can't go back to being a tradesman anymore. It's not enough. There's other levels to the game, and you just need to go through that. And you sort of realise the technician part is it's a very important part, but it's a very small part in the overall picture in terms of manager and visionary as well. And yeah, I went through the last 7-8 years. Has been a really intense journey of working on the business rather than just in the business. So, looking at the systems, the processes, the marketing strategies, sort of being that front face of the business and putting myself out there and doing the podcasting and different things. That's what drives a business forward, and that's the part nobody else can do. All the other parts someone can actually do. There's some good people there that love admin. They love the numbers. They love finance. They love doing the invoices. There's people who love doing the surveys and quoting and typing all the stuff up and all of that. There's people who just love doing the roofing. So you get people who enjoy it and love it and are willing to spend sort of 40 hours a week on doing that, and then you spend your 40 hours on working on the business. And the closer you can get to the 40 hours, the more your momentum will start to grow, and you'll push the machine forward. But in many respects, it is, we have very much so got that human element of the business, but it is also a machine where it's like, it starts with marketing, then it's sales, then it's operations, then it's working on the margins, so there's all these parts. And when you see it as that, and you just see it as like sort of levers, and you push those levers forward, you're then just jumping between them all to see what one needs a bit of assistance. And it's good to see it from that point, like a helicopter view, seeing your business and looking down on top of it and understanding this bit's working great, this bit isn't. How can we get this department speaking to this department so that the overall service is better for the customer, or so that we can attract new business in, or whatever your strategy might be at that time. How can we recruit better? How do we make ourselves be a good business to the staff so that they can then go and recommend people that they know would be good for the job to come in and help us out? And it's just once you see how much there is involved in that and how ever evolving business actually is, then like you've kind of got to give the tool belt up. Yeah, there's too much. Yeah. There's too much to do off the tools. So, anyone who might be watching your podcast or listening to it, that's my advice: is get off the tools and go into the next part of the journey. Do your apprenticeship in business. Mm-hmm. It's fun.
Yeah, 100%, and
stressful as well, to be honest. But
100%, definitely going to be stressful, and it's not for everyone as well. Like some people, they stay on the tools for like pretty much their whole life, from 16, 17 into their 50s, 60s. And if that's what they want to do, that's up to them, right? It's not for everyone because there's a lot of stress involved. And like you just said, another thing I want to mention as well is you said 2012 is when you first started. We're now in 2024, 12 years later. a lot of people when they start their own business, they expect like within the first year or two, they expect pretty much diamonds to fall from the sky or something. I don't know what they think.
Yeah.
And then they feel really disappointed when they're in their third, fourth, fifth year, and it's just not working that well. Um,
Hmm.
a 12-year journey you've been on, and you just said as well, it wasn't until 4 years later is when you actually became a limited company, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. So a lot of people need to realize that it's more of a marathon, not a sprint. And another thing I want to touch on as well, which is important, is the fact how your turning point, from what you mentioned, your turning point was when you actually learned business education, and when you actually, you went to the networking event and you actually spoke to someone who was more experienced, and you actually took on information, and you actually took on essentially, their advice pretty much on your business, and you started working on the business, not in the business. Um, that was, by the sounds of it, what you wanted to do. So, like, that's another thing is people need to start investing in their own education and start actually learning about things like marketing, things like sales, operations, systems, processes, the whole shebang, pretty much.
Yeah.
Um, while you are on your journey, because you said you started hiring out, from 2016, 2017 onwards, pretty much, and that's when you started building. How did you actually find the right people to put in place? Like, what was your process to actually hire and recruit and find the best people?
Yeah, I think the recruitment side of things for me has always been values first and skills second. So very much, get someone in who matched our core values, and our core values that we started out with. We went through an exercise of, we took like sort of the 5 or 6 guys that we had around us, and probably myself included, and we got a whiteboard and we said, if we could replicate these people, most of them were really tight on the values at that point because it's quite a small group. It's easier to keep a hold of that way. But we said, right, what's everyone got in common? What is it that we're all doing here? And our values ended up being hard work, trust, growth, and giving back. So that was our initial values, and we've built on those a little now. And we added in communication, quality, and safety. But we're actually going through now that the business is sort of the business will do over sort of 3 million in revenue this year. The roofing business alone. We have got the solar business as well as a separate entity. And then I've got Taylor Talks, the podcast and the consultancy business. But the roofing business alone is sort of well into its multi-millions now. And we're probably going on the journey from 3 to 10 million. So our values are starting to change a little. They're just not quite the ones that were there at the beginning, and we're kind of going through a bit of an identity shift. However, that was how we were hiring. So I was sort of, people would come in and we would interview them and we'd make sure that they were hardworking, they were trustworthy, and they wanted to grow and develop and get better. And then also we wanted to make sure that like we would give back to the community, and we would sort of give back to our team, and we'd give back to each other. So we wanted to make sure that they were that type of person as well. Just simple things like, if anyone needs a lift in the morning and you've given me a van, I'll pick them up on the way in. Or if a wee job needs done out of hours at the end of the day, we'll go and catch up on the way home. Like, that was the sort of values that it was built on. So when people came in and we could assess their skills once they were in, if the values were right, we would just work on training them and making them better at the actual job. And that's probably what I would say has served me well, is that we've got a lot of good people at Taylor Roofs, a lot of good people. And it's my job to make sure that the systems and processes allows them to be the best they can possibly be. And that's what we always continue to try and do. So, sometimes you can go out into the marketplace and you can hire like a maverick who's amazing, and they're just brilliant at everything. But a lot of the times it's getting people in who fit in with your business and fit in with the rest of the team. We're 40 plus people now we employ. So that's a lot of personalities that need to get on with each other in order for everything to move forward. So it's very much, for me, is more about the people over the skills. But obviously they need to be competent. They need to become experts in their field, but we help them to do that. So yeah, I think it's attitudes more than anything as sort of been our recruitment sort of strategy, if you like.
Yeah, That's another big thing because, like, the thing is with obviously you need skill and you need people who are talented, right? No one is going to argue that. But I think about personality and the thing about like a person's values and where they grow up and like the basics about their upbringing and on what they believe in, their values and all of that. You can't really change that in a person. So if you hire someone who is maybe a bit of a hard shell to crack, or maybe they don't get along well with pretty much anyone in the company, then
Yeah,
it's difficult to change that once you've hired them. So values is a big thing, and I can sense that as well from what I've seen about the company and everything about that as well.
yeah,
So one thing I wanted to touch on, which a lot of people might already noticed online and as well, is that you went on your own personal journey with regards to your weight loss journey that you went on, and I wanted to talk about that because a lot of people don't. The thing is, a lot of like coaches and consultants, they talk about how you feel in terms of as a person in your own body and how that affects your business, and a lot of like business entrepreneurs, whatever you want to call them, overlook that type of thing because they don't realize how important it is and how much of a difference it can make in your life. Can you just touch briefly about, like, first of all, what made you want to go on that journey, and has it made a difference on you as a business entrepreneur?
yeah, definitely. In terms of does it make a difference? It just totally does. I've lost 7 stone, I think it is, in weight, and I ran a marathon with my brother earlier this year, which was sort of at the end of losing the 7 stone. That was sort of how we kind of finalised it and tied it all up. Was almost, we'll go and run this marathon and it'll sort of prove prove ourselves to kind of each other, and well, prove to ourselves that we can go and do a marathon, which is a massive achievement. Even the training for the marathon, because it was like, I think it was 16 weeks of training, 4 runs a week. That takes a disciplined individual to do that type of thing. And I think we missed 4 runs out of all of that, which is quite incredible considering you're juggling multiple businesses, a podcast, young family, four kids and things like that, and lots of other commitments out with it. So that was quite a big step. And the old version of myself, probably, although I did have the drive and determination and grit to get things done, I don't think I could have done something quite as as um, as sort of disciplined and powerful as that. And obviously, I'd built up a good bit of fitness, and having looking after myself better as well, massively helped. But so the way I carry myself now is totally different. I've got a lot more confidence, and I feel like more of a leader to my team, and probably just generally overall, you just feel a lot better. Going from like a 3XL to like a medium in size, sometimes even I can sneak a small on. My stepson, he's now 19, and sometimes he's got a wee small kind of top that's came through the wash, and although that looks quite good, I'll sneak that on, and it fits in. Like, so there's that element of it where you've kind of proven something to yourself. But what had basically happened was I learned how to do, like, how to become a businessman, and I just didn't have the balance right. So I'd learned all of these things that we spoke about earlier, but what I was doing was I was really damaging my health. So I was binge eating a lot, so to put up with the stresses of business. I didn't like drink alcohol, didn't smoke or anything like that, didn't gamble or have any of these sort of vices. But my vice was like junk food, basically. And like, I would just do like very long days at work, and then I would be there into the evening as well, and I'd like miss dinner time and things, and it would always be like a takeaway every night. And on the way home, I'd like go to the shop, and I would grab like a couple of, like, steak pies, the wee individual ones, and like lots of packets of crisps and sweeties and things like that, and just fizzy juice. And I would just binge on it, and that was my release, and it was just so damaging. And I did that for a long period of time, and then I actually ended up, I got to a point where I felt terrible. I thought, I really need to do something about this, and I did. And then I'd started to lose weight, and it was going quite well. Then we went into the pandemic, so COVID came, and because our business was closed for sort of 3-4 months or whatever it was, we had everyone on furlough at that point, I had a lot more time, so I exercised a lot, and I had been out running like sort of 5K every single day, and then I'd done bigger runs, and I was eating healthy and got myself in really good shape. I think I lost like 6 or 7 stone during that period of time, and believe it or not, like I put it all back on. Do you know? I just when I went back to proper real life, I guess, because I'd had these 4 months of no the same business stress. When I went back into that sort of stressful environment, a few things happened. There was someone that left my business who had been in my business for a long time, and it affected me really badly. We had to part ways, and it affected me really badly. And I just took the company through a pandemic. We grew through the pandemic. You know, the business got stronger during it and through it. And I'd just been carrying all of that, and then I just hadn't really managed the balance. And then slowly but surely, I sort of started the bad eating habits again, and things like that crept in, and the weight just started going up. And then I ended up actually getting COVID I think it was the December of 2020, and I just felt terrible with it. It made me feel really ill. Up till that point, I had quite a bulletproof mindset. I just kind of almost went, look, we'll take the proper health and safety protocols and things, but I'm not really believing what COVID is. And I just went on like a blinkered version and just kept pushing the business forward. And when I caught COVID, I was really ill with it. And I think what happened was I'd lowered my vibration to like match the frequency of COVID, if that makes sense. I'm quite big on sort of law of attraction and affirmations and different things. And I think that's what happened. And I got myself into quite a bad place, and I got ill with that, and then it sort of kicked on from there. So I was really quite ill in 2021, just taking sort of non-epileptic seizures and things like that, and got diagnosed with diagnosed with a FND, so like a neurological disorder, and yeah, I was just in quite a horrible place, to be honest. But over the like sort of this last 7 years, as I've been saying, I've built up a lot of resilience, and I've done so much on personal development and done things like meditation and just all like this different things. So I've got quite a big toolkit for dealing with that kind of stuff. And although I was in a bad place then, it wasn't like I didn't mean all of that was gone. So I had to kind of go back into the toolkit and go back to basics, and started to try and like eat healthy again and try and get fit again, started the meditation again and all of this stuff, and basically just went on a bit of a journey of I need to get back to where I was, but I need to go one step further this time and be able to maintain it, have the proper balance and do it properly. And actually I reached out and got some help from a sort of coach mentor, Dominic Ingle, and he was a well-respected guy in the boxing world and sort of nutrition and stuff in general, but he'd worked with like a lot of sort of top level athletes, sort of more recently like Kell Brook, and took him through the camp for against Amir Khan and his win there and things like that. So he's quite a high profile guy, and that made me think I'm going to respect him. So if I work with him, I know that will give me a good accountability, and I won't want to let this guy down if he takes me on, sort of thing. And so I started working with him, and that's probably that's made a big change. I think we're about 14 months since I'd started working with him. Still working with him now. We're very much in the maintenance phase now, but the way I see it is, until I know that I'm 100% not going back to where I was before, which I'm not going to, but I'm just a big believer in like keeping that sort of accountability there and working through that. That's pretty much that's pretty much where I'm at with it. But in terms of your question, like, does it make me feel better? Absolutely. Running a marathon and just even seeing the videos or the photos of me and my brother doing that together, that was an amazing thing. And looking at myself, I think, what a turnaround, from where I was, seven plus stone overweight, and really, I had actually had my driving license taken off me because they weren't sure if I was able to drive, just because of the like what was happening sort of from the neurological point of view. But yeah, it was a testing time, but it's now why I teach the mentees that I work with, my consultancy clients. When I'm mentoring them, I'm trying to explain to them, like, you need to take the full picture into account. It can't be business success at all costs, and you've got to sort of spread it so it's sustainable. Because we had our most profitable years during that time when I got, like, just before and just after me falling really ill. We put some serious money into, like, our banking things, and gave us a real platform to push forward. But it was nearly at the detriment it was at the detriment to my health. But there's a plausible case that I probably could have died during that time, because I was so just so away from what real reality really needed to be. I sort of had it was more or less a mental breakdown, you could call it. And I was in quite a lot of bother at that time. But I'm proud that I've came back from that, and I've shown that, I'm here for a long time. It's 12 years in business. It's sustainable. It's not get rich quick, any of this construction stuff. There is steps you can take to do it, but you've got to balance it. You've got to have that sustainability factor there. And yeah, I think I got things wrong, but we were going through a pandemic and there was a lot going on, and there's probably reasons as to why what happened, but learned from them and understand now that can't do that again. Just got to build a new way forward, and that's what I've been doing and continuing to do. And if I can pass that on to people as well, I'd like to make sure anyone that works with me avoids that, because that was a scary spot. But those things make us who we are. So
yeah, it's an amazing story. And like, construction is renowned to have a lot of issues with mental health, and also the suicide rates are one of the highest out of all other industries. So unfortunately, it's a common thing with construction in general, just because of how much goes on. Like, just you've got so many moving parts, so many different things can go wrong. So it's an unfortunate part of it, but that's probably why it's more important than ever to make sure that your mental health is in check, your physical health is in check. Make sure that you balance your life out. We're coming on to the last 5 minutes or so of the podcast. Now, what I always do, I did shamelessly steal it from Stephen Bartlett from Diary of a CEO, where he basically asks the guest for a question for the next guest. So your question from last episode is kind of overlaps from what you started with, actually. But what would you say to your younger self when you started out?
What would I say to my younger self when I started out? It's quite a hard question, that, isn't it, to be fair? I'd probably just say believe in yourself, just believe in yourself. I think any time that I've not believed in myself is when things go wrong. But when I take that leap of faith and I just go for it and I put everything on me, it's all accountability and all ownership and all responsibility is all on me. I've never let myself down yet. So I would just say, just remember that. Remember who you are and believe in yourself. It's when you let the noise get on top of you and the doubters come in and say you'll never be able to do that. When you start to listen to those people around you, the struggles come in. But yeah, believe in yourself. Remember who you are, And I think sometimes even now I need to say that to myself. You push yourself to the next levels, and there is a lot of doubt comes in. You need to remember who you are, what you've been through as well. And I think hopefully that answers it.
Yeah,
Good question,
it's
though.
a great answer. Yeah, I mean, the thing with that is as well is, like, it's insane how the human mind works. Like, you could have like, you might have one huge job come in one day, and you feel like you're on top of the world, right? Like, it's a huge job, you won it. Like, maybe you had like 3 or 4 different people bidding against you, and you're like, get in, like, I actually won this. And then the day after, you lose a job, and you're like, oh my god, like, the world's ending. It's just crazy how much
it's
it
a
can
roller
flip in
coaster.
construction.
It really is
it
a
is
roller coaster.
there. So, like, having things like core values and having things like that in your head, whether it's, it sounds cringy, but like whether you write it on, a board in your room or whatever, that you can look at every single day to remind yourself, so that when those moments come, whether it's a high or a low, if it's a high, you're almost expecting, okay, this is a high moment. Tomorrow it'll probably be a low moment. Next week it might be a low moment. But you just need to remember to stay balanced and just to make the best decisions possible. So it's a great answer. Now, if you could speak to, another contractor, whoever it is, what kind of question would you ask? It can be either personal, business related, anything you can think of, really.
Yeah. Quite difficult again. If I was speaking to another contractor, what I would probably say is, what is the thing that could be possible for you that you haven't considered yet? We all have these goals and we all have these aspirations of, I can finish my apprenticeship, I can become a contractor, I can start my own business, I can hire people. What's like beyond all of that? What's like your real sort of, what would be your legacy? Like what's the thing that's would just take you right out of your comfort zone and would be like, imagine your business being complete. Imagine that all being said and done. What would the next step be? What's like that part? Because when you get that vision can pull you forward in your hardest moments, and even in your best moments, it gives you a direction. But in your toughest days and some of those hard days that I had, thankfully I'd built this vision, and I'll always know what the next level is. I always know what the next steps are. So yeah, I hope that answers it. You might be able to put it into a wee bit more.
I like that question. I really like that question because it's more of an end goal type question. So it like goes through a lot of the usual answers someone would get. I'm gonna do something different. I'm gonna play a reverse Uno card on you right now, and I want to ask you that question exactly, because the thing is, you touched on that the goal is to get to 10 million a year, in the next however long it takes. I have a feeling that there is another thing that you have in mind with the solar side, with the podcast, with the mentorship that you do now. What is your end goal? Like, if you could fast forward in 10 years time and you see like everything's worked out, what does that look like?
Well, I call that almost like your North Star, and that's the direction of where you're going. And sometimes you can't always see it. My next level that's probably not on show yet, because all of that other stuff that you mentioned is all things that I'm doing, and I have got long-term plans with all of those businesses and where I'll take them. But my level beyond that is probably very much, all the mentors and the people that I've followed and the books that I've read. I want to work with those guys. Some of them, albeit they're maybe getting a bit older and things like that as well. But I very much think, after the sort of Taylor Talks Trades element of the podcast, I think I could see myself doing something sort of Taylor Talks personal development or something to that effect, and having some of these real mentors that I've studied intensely and have really changed who I am as a person, and allowed me to really use construction as the vehicle that it is for my successes, and to help a lot of people, whether that's customers or our staff, keeping a roof over people's heads and our main business. But that's sort of the next part I see is just almost like proving myself on another level above the trades as well, and that's where I kind of, I've got some aspirations to go and do that type of stuff. Like the people who changed my life, to basically be on that, I'm not saying a level playing field, but to sit and maybe have a conversation on a podcast with those people and sort of just get a bit closer to the source of the information, and then just share that back. Just go back and share it back again. And I'll still always stay in the trades in some respects, but I could see myself maybe working with all businesses as well, not just trades businesses, but business is universal, so there might be an element to that as well. And and the most exciting part for me is not knowing sometimes what's beyond that, and there is like tiers and steps of the things that I'm doing, and I can see how I could complete them all, and some of it changes as you go. But knowing that there is a thing like that question I asked, like, what is it you've not considered yet? That's the bit I'm always looking for. But you do need to come back to sort of today and go, what do I need to do today? You can't always be in that dreamlike state and going for the big vision, but having one there, as I take the next few steps, it'll keep appearing. So that'll come a bit stronger, that next level, and then there'll be something after that. And the world's changing at a fast pace as well, so it could be something, as I said in the question there, I've not even considered yet. It might be, could be anything, to be honest. That's the joy.
Yeah, no, 100%. AI, it could be AI today, and then 10 years time, it could be something else. We never know, to be honest.
That's it.
I speak to my granddad who's in his 70s, and I showed him ChatGPT once, and he just couldn't get his head around it at all. He was just like, is there someone at the other end of this? Like, I don't know. He could not get his head around it at all. So it's going to be the same thing with us. But yeah, it's been amazing. I can't believe we're already an hour into the podcast. But thank you so much for coming on, Jamie. If you are watching on Spotify, or listening on Spotify rather, or watching on YouTube, all James' links will be in the description for his socials and his LinkedIn, his company, everything you can find will be there. It'll be the first ones in the description. Thank you guys for listening or watching. We'll see you guys next time.